There is a move to bring national monuments to much of the West. Just creating them, just an executive order signed out by the president that put lands basically off limits to you to make a living, or as a tax base, or to have industry and commerce, and that is running through the West. You all here in this area have been the beneficiaries of the wolf movement, which runs the risk of driving every rancher out of business in this part of the state. Over in Catron County, they built wooden shelters to keep their children safe as they wait on the buses. They put wire around it to keep their kids safe inside. A couple of years ago, we were able to show on the floor of the house the skeleton of a horse that was just ripped clean by the wolves right in the backyard. And the 13-year-old owner of that horse got scared to go to school. We showed a picture of her finally carrying a firearm here in order to feel safe enough to walk out in her own backyard. We've asked that the Fish and Wildlife Service reconsider its position, but they have yet to do that. It is in this area of the state that I got one of the first real tests. Would we stand by ourselves on the side of right and against government too strong? There's a guy named Kit Laney out in the western part of the state. You could like him or you could dislike him. That's not the issue. The issue is that the Forest Service showed up in the middle of the night with 20 armed officers to confiscate his cattle and send him to jail. They were going to try to send him to jail for 68 years for grazing violations. 68 years. And if the courts catch someone and have someone who's carried less than 500 pounds of marijuana that's here without documentation, they let him go because it's not sufficient. And for a grazing violation, they're going to put him in jail 68 years. By ourselves, neither senator would take this issue on. And we stood as an office by ourselves against the federal judge and against the Forest Service and everyone. For months, we negotiated saying it is not right. You can have your rules and your penalties, but 68 years. We negotiated down from 68 to 63 to 60 to 40 to 30 to 20 to 10 to 11, down to 6, 4. And finally, when we got to 4 months, the federal judge told us one day, he said, tomorrow it's going back to 68 years. You tell that man to sign up. Now, we went to Mr. Laney and we said, sir, I don't think you should be going to jail for grazing, but the stakes are now very high and the ball's in your court. He went ahead and signed the papers to go to jail for grazing violations in this nation here. That's a part of this big picture that's going on. We defend the Goss family over in Weed when the government is trying to force them off their public grazing allotment. These are constitutional issues where our government is simply saying it doesn't matter what the Constitution says, doesn't matter what the private property rights are, we're going to take them from them. And they have been steadfastly doing that in the West. And in fact, when you look at this decision with the Forest Service, when you look at the BLM and the wildlands policy, when you look at the willingness to create wilderness along our southern border, and when we do that, we're going to have no accessibility to stop the people who are coming here illegally. They're going to flood across. I went out to the Organ Pipe National Monument in Arizona, and I saw the signs personally and was briefed by the personnel that work there that this is not safe. Half of the Organ Pipes National Monument is not safe for American citizens because of the illegal traffic through it. And when I see all these things roll together, I realize that we have a war on the West that is going on. It's a war on our jobs. It's a war on our way of life. It's a war on our culture. It is a war on us as individuals. And if we don't stand up now, they're going to simply take away every single thing we have to do for ourselves. Now, this roadless rule seems to have come out of nowhere, but the truth is it came up under the Clinton administration. If you simply Google roadless areas, national forest, you begin to get a series of articles, and all of them in the early parts of that Google search will tell you that really what the roadless rule is intended to do is shut down all the logging forever and ever. That's what it's about. They just recently announced that a minnow a lizard over in Lee County is going to be listed. Going to list it for protection. It has the potential to shut down the entire industry in Lee County. That would be the oil and gas industry and the $2.8 billion nuclear enrichment facility that has been built near Eunice. All of it be shut down. The people that are making livings and contributing to the tax base of America and to the tax base of New Mexico would be put onto the streets because of an arbitrary listing of a lizard. And I tell you, the war on the West is continuing today. Now, just day before yesterday, I was in talking to the Speaker of the House, John Boehner. He knows that I was just recently named the Western Caucus Chairman. And the Speaker of the House said, look, I understand there's a war on your end of the country that doesn't exist back here where I live in Ohio and in the rest of the country. But he said, I will do what I can to elevate the issue and to help you fight to regain the rights for the West. And so know that we're going to go back and we're going to take him up on that promise. We're going to work to keep this rebellion alive. Our founding fathers came here and they created this country. They created a constitution that limited the government severely. Article 1 of our Constitution talks about our government and its powers. Section 8 enumerates those powers, and it's only like 10 or 12. Section 9 speaks to the fear of our founding fathers that even then the government would do the things they had seen in Europe. So they said, we're going to limit ex post facto laws, bills of attainder. You can't do those. And even then they couldn't get the Constitution approved by all the states because people in this country were petrified of a government that was too strong and too big. And so the 10th Amendment came in, and only then could they get people to sign off, the group at the Constitutional Convention to sign off. The 10th Amendment says every right not expressly given to the U.S. government is reserved for the states, and that's what we're talking about. The Forest Service does not, under our Constitution, have the right to shut these roads down, and we're going to make an issue of it. We're going to go and we're going to talk about the Constitution, about what they're doing today. You have a bunch of people saying that if we can get there, if we can walk out there, you all can get there. I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it to say there's no legal requirement. We're talking about human justice. We're talking about right versus wrong. Forget the legality and the technicalities of the law. We're here to start standing for what is right. And so when people ask me, what's the cure for this great country? What's the cure for all of these problems that you're seeing for us today? I say the cure is when Americans begin to stand for what is right. They'll begin to elect people who will do what is right. And when you send people to Washington or to Santa Fe to do what's right, then keep tabs on them. Hold them accountable. Ask them the questions, are you really leaving it there for right versus wrong? For good against evil? Are we going to do the things that's going to fix this country? I'm telling you, the greatest threat that we face today, and I'm just going to wrap up with this point, the greatest threat that we face today is economic threats. We have decimated industry in this country in the name of something, and we can't always explain what. We are overtaxing and regulating our businesses out of the country so that now then we're just looking for jobs. We no longer have the belief that we can have a career. What are our kids going to think? Our government is spending 3.5. Just that number is all you have to know. 3.5. It's, by the way, a T, trillion. 3.5 trillion is what we spend this past year, and we brought in 2.2. If that was you, your banker would not allow you to continue. That's right. You would have to cut your expenses. You would have to get a second job. You would have to come up with more revenue, something. My friends, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for the government. And it is not working for our government. What they're doing is borrowing from China to keep the spending going. And I don't think that many of you here in this audience want to continue to borrow from China. No. But the more devastating thing that they're doing is they're printing money. The printing of money silently takes what you've got out of your bank account and puts it in the government bank account. They printed $2.6 trillion last year to try to make this scheme work. My friends, CBO, that's the Congressional Budget Office, and OMB, that's the White House, both have charts on their homepage that will show you that our economy quits in 2037. It's not quitting because we're not taxing you enough. It's quitting because we're spending too much, and that's the piece that we're going to get in control. This ability to kill our industries is originating right here, because there'll never be another tree cut in the national forest when these rudderless rules go into effect. The timber industry used to hire 20,000 people in New Mexico. In contrast, the oil and gas industry, you know how important that is? It has only 23,000. I'm saying it is time for us to put people back to work. We can keep the spotted owl alive in sanctuaries, but we can start logging and bringing careers back to this community and all the communities of the West. So we put in a series of 3 bills that will go straight at the issue. The first one is just that, keep the spotted owl alive in the sanctuaries and put people back to work in the forest. That could be 20,000 jobs, but more. Every time you hire one person, you decrease that 3.5 that the government costs. They're no longer on welfare, they're no longer on unemployment, and they come down and start paying taxes. So you're squeezing the 3.5 and raising 2.2 with every job that's hired. That's how we fix the future of the country. The second bill I put in was to put those 27,000 farmers back to work in the San Joaquin Valley. We shut down those farmers over 2 years. When we shut those farmers down, what we did is start importing food from Central America and South America, and we can't control what they spray. They spray things on there, pesticides that we can't use, so our food supply is less safe. We have more people on unemployment and welfare, and our economy is sagging underneath these designs. We can keep the minnow alive and holding ponds and put them in the river. And so I put a second bill in that says just that. The third bill I put in there is just because I think we need to be having these discussions. What's it going to take to fix our economy? And people have to understand what it is that's killing our economy. The third example that I'm using and putting a bill in is offshore. Now I think BP should be 100% accountable for what went on offshore. That was the business that my wife and I were in. We fixed oil wells. I could see the decision sequence as they approached the problems in that well, and I can tell you that there were huge mistakes made, and they should be accountable and responsible, and they're paying 100% of it, don't get me wrong. But I don't think we should have killed one job offshore. We're killing 100,000 jobs over there, taking people that were making over 6 figures and putting them off tax-paying status into welfare unemployment. That's the reason that our economy is breaking, and we have people here in this country saying that we've got to protect the species, protect the worker, and protect the environment at all costs. And I'm saying, no, we can do both. It's time for us to take our liberty, to get our economy back to work, to put people back to work. That's going to happen when we continue to show up at these meetings and continue to voice our concerns. When we go and we stand in front of the Forest Service building on Monday, and when we begin to tell them what we feel. When we begin to talk to Washington and say enough is enough, then Washington is going to listen. Until then, we're going to continue to see this war on the West that's taking away our jobs and our standard of living, that's taking away our very rights and freedom. So you can count me in on the fight. My presence here today removes all doubt for those people who thought I might not want to come here and might not want to be associated with something that says our government is too strong and powerful. I don't want there to be any questions, because I will stand firmly and I will stand publicly on behalf of liberty and freedom every single day. And that's the question that we're engaged in here. I want to tell you thank you and God bless you. Appreciate everything.